Hello, I'm Laura and I'm here today with Miss Crisp. We're here for another MSE English Language Teacher live stream. That's our second one this week. If you were here on Tuesday, you'd have seen me with Miss Rogerson talking all things creative writing, description, narrative and stuff. Miss Crisp, what are you going to be talking about today?
Well, I'm going to be looking at transactional writing, so sort of persuasive elements and predominantly speeches, so how to analyse them, because if you can analyse them, then you can write them. So that's basically it.
Sounds great. So we've got some great extracts coming up for you guys to analyse, and then we'll get you having a go at writing your own speeches a bit later on in this live stream. So if you have any questions at all things speeches, all things persuasive writing, all things English language, drop them in the comments and we'll try and answer as many of those as we can throughout the stream.
Yeah.
I'm going to head off and let you get on with that, and I'll see you guys later. Okay. Enjoy.
Thank you. Okay, so obviously, really I need to kind of ascertain what persuasive devices you already know. So if you are can pop down ones that you already know and quite confident about, but also whether you have any favourite speeches. And if you think about it, transactional writing is really important because you need it for both AQA and also the IGCSE. So AQA Paper 2 predominantly, you need persuasive and argumentative writing, and also of course IGC, it's informative, advisory, persuasive, whatever. But I think the three things that you really need to think about whenever you're writing is, especially with sort of this side of things, is audience, purpose and form. So the form is very much kind of what they're asking you to write. So for example, this evening we're looking at speeches, but you could be asked to be writing a letter, you could be asked to write a web page, you could be asked to write, as a kind of an advisory leaflet. But in the AQA, very much it's argument and persuasion. So that's predominantly what we're going to look at. Also as well, of course, as soon as you've kind of got that under your belt, is how you adapt your vocabulary and your tone. So you want to show the examiner you've totally understood who it's aimed at, why you're writing it, so that you can adapt your vocabulary accordingly. Okay, so I think we'll go from our first speech, which is Winston Churchill's We'll Fight Them on the Beaches. And I think anything with a speech is really quite important to realise the audience and the purpose. So I don't know how much you know about why this speech was written or when it was written, but it was written sort of in June 1940, and the British, we'd just suffered the sort of one of the biggest defeats in military history. We'd had to kind of retreat out of France at Dunkirk. My grandpa was there, bless him, standing in the water for hours, and basically Britain was on its knees. So Churchill had to write a speech that was going to get people to continue to fight. So there's two things I want you to think about really is kind of how powerful it is. Keep your eyes peeled for any persuasive devices, and let's have a watch.
I have myself full confidence that if all do their duty, if nothing is neglected, and the best arrangements are made as they are being made, we shall prove ourselves once more able to defend our island home, to ride out the storm of war, and to outlive the menace of tyranny, if necessary, for years, if necessary, alone. At any rate, that is what we are going to try to do. That is the resolve of His Majesty's government, every man of them. To your right. That is the will of Parliament and the nation. The British Empire and the French Republic, linked together in their cause and in their need, will defend to the death their native soil, aiding each other like good comrades to the utmost of their strength. Even though large tracts of Europe and many old and famous states have fallen or may fall into the grip of the Gestapo, and all the odious apparatus of the Nazi rule. We shall not flag or fail. We shall go on to the end. We shall fight in France. We shall fight on the seas and oceans. We shall fight with growing confidence and going straight in the air. We shall defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills. We shall never surrender! I have myself.
Okay, so let's have a look at the written transcript of this speech. Right, if we think about it, we're going to pick out some of the key quotations, but also persuasive devices, and hopefully you spotted some of them. As I mentioned, there's lots of lovely repetition. So if we go down here straight away, we shall, 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 but also we shall fight. So this was his message. He wanted Britain to keep on going, even though we were at our knees, not to give up. And the fact that actually he mentions every single place he could think of. So we will go on to the end. The end, obviously being a euphemism. Euphemism is where we kind of say things, not saying dead, for example, but the end. We shall fight in France. We've got seas, we've got oceans, we've got all the things that perhaps we love here. So lots of lovely repetition of this almost refrain. A refrain is a repeated phrase throughout towards the end as he comes to his conclusion. So repetition is important as well, but also good old inclusive personal pronouns. So here we have the personal pronouns that really make sure that everyone feels included. You, me, we. Very, very important. So another thing we have is clusters of three. So we go up to here. Here we have, once again, we've got personal pronoun up here. We shall prove ourselves once again able to defend our island home. That is very emotive, the fact that it's our island home. Brings it home to us that actually home is more emotive than house. If you think about it, home is somewhere where your heart is. It's somewhere that's warm, it's cosy, it's welcoming. So this is very much something that you would definitely fight for. A house is just a building after all. But then if we're thinking about these clusters of three, we've got ride out the storm of war, outlive the menace of tyranny if necessary own. So able to defend our island home. Also, we've got metaphors here. All right, ride out the storm of war. Almost kind of the energy, but also the devastation. Okay, devastation here. And then sort of the fact that we'd ride those storm to outlive the menace of tyranny. Okay. Also as well, if we think down here, we've got as well this idea of antithesis or opposites. So we've got this idea of the fact that actually we'll defend our island home against the menace of tyranny. So this idea of tyranny is where a tyrant is taken over, so someone really, really bad is taken over. We don't want that. Menace as well means something, this idea of lurking. So also, once again, emotive language. Emotive language is really, really effective in speech writing. Here, British Empire, British linked together in their cause, will defend to the death, once again this idea of very emotive stuff, of their native soil. This links to this idea of home, native soil, aiding each other, utmost strength. Even though Europe has given in, what's that, this idea of even though they have, we won't. This opposite, we shall not flag or fail. Nice bit of alliteration there as well. All right, to emphasise your point, or his point, I should say. He did it rather well. And I think it's very important. So we've got emotive language, top thing. We've got repetition. We shall fight, we shall fight, we shall fight. We actually will fight them everywhere. He does actually obviously have to give a counter argument because he knew it was going to be a difficult fight. So, because Europe had obviously, we'd had to retreat, and Europe was under basically Nazi occupation. And then to the end, he's like, we will never surrender. That emphasis on the never there. But if we were conditional, if we were subjugated and starving, once again alliteration and sibilance to really emphasise that, then hopefully our empire would help us. So even though everything seemed to be absolutely doomed, like proper doomed, he's giving us this hope. It's our home, we've got to defend it. We literally will fight them everywhere. Okay, so sum up, we've got repetition, personal pronouns we, very, very inclusive. Okay, everyone will do their duty here, our island home. Everyone, okay, everyone is going to have a fight. We've got this sort of clusters of three: British Empire, French Republic, linked together, native land. We've also got the use of opposites, this counter argument, and also emotive language. Okay, so really effective. And let's face it, if you in the clip with Gary Oldman playing Winston Churchill, Parliament were really behind him. My mum remembers hearing this on the radio. She was a little girl during the war, and she said that her whole family were like, yes, we are going to fight on to the end. So powerful, powerful stuff. Also, he fully believes it. I have myself full confidence. Okay, and then he ends with something really powerful, which is the liberation. Yeah, liberation is an important word to us in Guernsey, and I think this idea of the fact that actually liberation is this idea of freedom. So once again, a very emotive ending. Okay.
Right then, shall I come and join you?
Yes, come and join me.
Some pretty powerful stuff there, huh?
Oh yes, very much so.
It seems quite appropriate with the election in the UK at the moment as well. These powerful political speeches and everything. Yeah. We've not had many questions in yet, but Gacha Videos by Katie has been getting in the comments with lots of these persuasive devices that you've been looking at as well.
Yeah.
They have a test on Monday, not completely related to this. It's sort of an English lit paper, but shorter because they're only in year 9. But do we have any advice?
Oh, okay. Well, I suppose it depends what your English lit paper would be on. So is it drama? Is it poetry? Is it prose? But I suppose with any lit paper, if you're going to have to answer basically answer the question. So highlight keywords into your question. That's an old chestnut really. So highlight keywords in your question. Make sure you understand what the question means, and then of course when you're writing, you've got to make sure you plan your answer.
Poetry,
fabulous. Right, make sure then that you plan your answer. And if you think about with poetry, remember you've got to think about the language choice. You've got to think about the imagery. So the pictures painted with words. You've got to think about your rhyme, if there's a rhyme scheme or not, rhythm, tone, maybe the title might be important, and also maybe what form it is. I mean, presumably it's a poem that you know. Is it an unseen poem or a poem that you knew? If it's not, try and have a guess what form. Hopefully your teacher's taught you that, but also try and get a feel for the poem. Don't be panicked if it is unseen. Don't be panicked if you don't get it. Just have another quiet little read and think, okay, how does this poem speak to me? Also as well, another question I always remind my students is, what do you like about this poem? What's your favourite bit? Maybe highlight that first. Now I'm going to give you a bit of confidence. And then you think right next to it why you like it. And try and think about maybe the analysis. So if it's a really exciting verb, for example, active verb, exciting, makes me feel energized or something like that. Okay, and then when it comes to actually writing, don't forget you've got to structure your paragraphs in the way perhaps that your teacher's taught you. So it might be that you have your point, which is your topic sentence where you argue your point. So it might be the fact that if this poem, I don't know, if it's a poem about war, for example, just keeping it in
conflict.
Yes, powering conflict poetry. If it's a poem about war, it might be something like it might be about the effects of war, the horrors of war presented by the language, and then you have nice little linking phrase. This is implied by quotation, short quotation, the better. And then of course you go when in your analysis. Choose a key word in that quotation that you then, what I say is unpack further. So try and have at least 2 ideas. So if we go back to our verb, an active verb and you feel energised, maybe energised is one of the connotations, and see if you can come up with another one. But I think just make sure that you answer the question, but also get a feel for that poem. And also poetry, there'll always be a hidden meaning. So there'll be a literal meaning, like what's literally there, but also there'll be a hidden meaning. If you can see that hidden meaning, that will also help pull your marks up.
Well, I hope that was helpful, and I think we're doing poetry next week.
Next week.
So Sunday, Miss Rogerson will be back, and you'll be back next Tuesday. We'll be looking at, I think, seen and unseen poetry.
Yes.
So set your reminders, and we'll hopefully have some more great tips for you then.
Yeah.
Got another question come in here. You might need to look at this. I'm not sure what this means. I'm in year 11. I've got my PPEs coming up in January. My question is how to understand a text at a high level. I'm not sure what a PPE is.
I'm not sure what a PPE is. Could you expand on that?
Yeah, drop us another comment.
Yeah, drop us another comment.
We'll maybe try and get to that question when we next look at questions.
Yeah.
Because I think we might be showing you a little trailer now before we go on to our next extract. Which we'll look at.
Fabulous.
So that's here now.
That 6 marker on solids, liquids and gases? Yes, please. Thank you for that.
I remember coming home, it was the first exam, the biology paper. I was scrolling through YouTube and I saw the MSE GCSE reaction team, the reaction to that paper.
We were given questions about a fania. It's a little parasite, a little bit.
I think it was one of the English papers, and I watched them. I totally could relate to them.
Today we had our last ever exam, physics paper 2. AQA.
Watching the exam videos this year were really helpful because I've just recently chosen my options.
I was struggling on literally every single question. I was like, I'll miss it and come back to it, but even when I came back to it, didn't make any sense.
I found MSE about 6 months ago when I was doing my year 10 mocks, and I've continued to watch them because they're just so useful and relatable.
I wish I discovered it earlier really, because all the videos were so helpful.
For once, I actually understood everything.
No! So I got that question wrong.
I'm really happy that I was part of the reaction team, because if you look in the comments of videos, it's so nice to see that the reaction videos have helped people through exam season.
Our last exam was history. I think it was the best one for all of us, to be honest.
I was really nervous at first, but I genuinely felt so a part of something.
I slightly went off on a tangent on the imaginative writing and wrote about they were lost on Mount Everest. So
that is such a good idea what MSE are doing.
Thank you for MSE for letting me be a part of the channel.
Hello, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that short trailer from us. We have got huge plans for exam season here at MSE, so make sure you're subscribed, and if you want to get involved in exam season, even better, search for the MSE Contributor app on Google Play or the App Store, and you can sign up there and send in your own exam reactions and contributions and lots more. So if you've only just tuned in, I'm Laura, I'm here with Miss Crisp, and we are focusing on English Language Paper 2, Paper 2 tonight, looking at the speech writing and analysing side of things. So Miss Crisp has got another extract for you guys to have a look at and analyse, looking for all those persuasive devices and things. So I will leave you to get on with your second one, and we'll be back later to answer some more of your questions, so keep those coming in.
Okay, thank you. Right, so my next extract is from a very famous Shakespeare play, Don't All Groan. Okay, it's from a Shakespeare play, Julius Caesar, and it's Mark Antony's speech. So once again, audience purpose, really important. Purpose, basically, Caesar's just been assassinated by Brutus and all the conspirators, and Brutus just has given this speech about how Caesar was putting himself up as a god, and Brutus had to kill him because it was a noble thing to do. It was the best thing. It was the honourable thing for Rome. Now, Mark Antony was kind of friends with Caesar, but also he's got ambitions of his own. So he's kind of playing the political game. And he stands up, and there's the Roman crowd in front of him, and they're all getting a bit rowdy. And Brutus has said he did it for honour. Mark Antony stands up, and he has to persuade the mob that's in front of him, again a bit unruly, that actually Brutus and his gang really have kind of done quite a bad thing in killing Caesar, and he wants to obviously this idea that he did not kill Caesar for the good of Rome. Okay, But I think what you've got to remember that Mark Antony himself was also ambitious, so this was written in quite a clever way. So I want you to think about persuasive elements, okay? I want you to look out for clusters of 3. So have a look on the board up here, some of them are up here, clusters of 3. I want you to look out for repetition, statistics, okay, so numbers or any kind of reference to anything numerical. Rhetorical questions, also very handy. What's interesting about this one and also the last one is it's based on personal experience. You can't write about something if you haven't got an idea, or if I tell my students, if in doubt, make it up, the examiner will never know. An involvement of the audience as well. So you've got to remember that you're writing for your audience, but also his ending is pretty strong, okay? So let's have a listen.
Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. The evil that men do lives after them. The good is oft interred with their bones. So let it be with Caesar. The noble Brutus hath told you Caesar was ambitious. If it were so, it was a grievous fault, and grievously hath Caesar answered it. Here, under leave of Brutus and the rest, for Brutus is an honourable man, so are they all honourable men, come I to speak in Caesar's funeral. He was my friend, faithful and just to me. But Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honourable man. He hath brought many captives home to Rome, whose ransoms did the general coffers fill. Did this in Caesar seem ambitious? When that the poor have cried, Caesar hath wept. Ambition should be made of sterner stuff. Yet Brutus says he was ambitious, and Brutus is an honourable man. You all did see that on the Lupercal I thrice presented him a kingly crown, which he did thrice refuse. Was this ambition? Yet Brutus says he was ambitious, and sure he is an honourable man. I speak not to disprove what Brutus spoke, but here I am to speak what I do know.
Repetition.
You all did love him once.
Yeah.
Not without cause.
Argument, counter-argument.
What cause withholds you then to mourn for him? O judgment, thou art fled to brutish beasts, and men have lost their reason.
I just thought this actor was amazing when I watched it earlier.
Oh, yeah. He's so good.
My heart is in the coffin.
Do you know his name's gone out my head?
There with Caesar.
I can tell you.
And I must pause till it come back to me.
Damian Lewis.
That's it. That's it. Okay, so the brilliant Damian Lewis there. Thank you for that. really good rendition of the speech. Okay, so let's have a look at what we can spot. It's possibly a bit small, but we'll do our best. So let's have a look. So he starts, cluster of 3, friends, Romans, countrymen. So already what he's doing is he's lowering himself to the audience's place. He's saying, look, I'm one of you. Lend me ears. This is it's imperative verb, giving an order, but it's not as kind of in your face as, you know, give me your ears. It's lend me your ears. I have come to bury Caesar, not to praise him. Right, if we think about it as well, so cluster of 3 we have got, there it is. Where else? We've got repetition, and we've got this idea here of, so let it be with Caesar. Hath he told Caesar was ambitious? So we've got reference to the fact that actually, the insinuation of course is that Brutus is ambitious, because this is the noble Brutus, perhaps with a little bit of irony. Irony is where you say the opposite of you mean. So Caesar was ambitious. If it was so, it were grievous fault. And grievously hath Caesar answered it. So we've got this idea of contrasting ideas. Argument, counter-argument. Grievously he hath answered it. Well, yeah, he has. He's kind of dead. Okay, so grievously hath Caesar answered it. Here under leave of Brutus and the rest. So in other words, Brutus and his mates have basically killed him. And then we've got here, in parenthesis, So brackets, Brutus is an honourable man. So once again, we've got this refrain, this repetition. He's an honourable man. But actually, let's face it, Mark Antony is using it ironically. Okay, he's basically implying he's not honourable. Okay, so we think about here as well, we've got some rhetorical questions. Did this in Caesar seem ambitious? In other words, basically saying Caesar kind of did a lot for Rome. He brought back loads of money. So actually, was this ambition for Caesar? Well, no, because he did it for the good of Rome. You know, this idea is, a rhetorical question is always good because it makes your audience really think, like, actually, Caesar, he was kind of quite a good dude. He brought us some money. Okay, and he's just been bumped off. Once again, we've got the repeated phrase here, but Brutus he was ambitious and Brutus is an honourable man. When that the poor have cried, Caesar hath wept. Yes, it's almost like exaggerating Caesar's goodness here, sort of almost hyperbole. Hyperbole, another one, sort of posh word for exaggeration. Very, very handy when you're wanting to persuade people. Once again, this idea ambition should be made of sterner stuff, yet Brutus says he was ambitious. So he's basically saying here that Caesar, he couldn't have been that ambitious because he cried when he felt sorry for the poor. You just see at the Persil, I thrice presented him. That means 3 times, presented him with the kingly crown, which he did thrice refuse. Was this ambitious? Also, short phrases. If you think about analysing structure, a lovely use of a short phrase there. Was this, a rhetorical question, was this ambitious? Okay, well, how can it be ambitious? How could he want to set himself up as a god? Because he refused the crown 3 times. Come on. And yet Brutus, once again, yet Brutus says he was ambitious, and sure he is an honourable man. So this idea of irony is also quite handy. We've also got statistics here, believe it or not, 3 times is a statistic. So if you put a number in anywhere, it adds validity to your argument. And we were talking about the fact, obviously it's election night, politicians that do it all the time. They throw numbers about because they know people believe numbers, rightly or wrongly. Okay, so if you put a statistic in, it makes it much more persuasive. Okay, based on personal experience, all of this is based on Mark Antony's personal experience. You know, I offered him the crown, Caesar said no. Caesar brought it here, Mark Antony was part of that campaign, blah, blah, blah. He's part of it, okay? Also, involvement of the audience, friends, Romans, countrymen, he's bringing them straight in. Also, use of rhetorical question, very much bringing to your audience. So let's have a look how he ends here. I speak not to disprove what Brutus spoke, double negative there, which kind of hints that actually Brutus was wrong. You all, right, there's another good one here. This is called direct address. Okay, direct address, it's not on my list, but we can add it. So direct address is very much you talk directly to your audience, involve your audience. You all did love him once, not without cause. Another rhetorical question. What cause withhold you then to mourn for him? Why aren't you mourning for him? Because we're reminded, actually, we're at Caesar's funeral. We're at Caesar's funeral. O judgment thou fled to brutish beasts. Lovely bit of alliteration there. And men have lost their reason. Bear with me. He's overcome with emotion. So he ends his speech with like, oh my goodness, I'm so upset that Caesar's dead. Brutish beast. Lovely alliteration on those plosives. B is a plosive, gives that like harsh sound that really emphasises his idea. And my heart is in the coffin. Oh, it's all very emotive, isn't it? My heart is there with Caesar. He was my friend. This really kind of ending strongly. And I must pause. I must have a moment. I need a moment till I come back to me. So this idea, so we end strongly because, actually, it's not. You can use a joke. You can use a catchphrase. You can use a refrain. But actually simply something memorable or emotive, and this is him using his emotion. Do we believe it or not? Not sure. I mean, Mark Antony went on to be part of the triumvirate, so who knows? I mean, we all know what happened to him, came to a sticky end because of Cleopatra. But, here, we think about it, he's using that emotion. He's using, in Shakespeare's always high emotion. Oh, judgment. Yes. He's almost goading the audience to be mourned for Caesar as much as he is. So really, really strong finish. Okay, so how many of these did you spot? I'm not sure.
Had a few coming in the comments.
Yeah.
People are still being quite shy tonight.
No, probably out on the razzmatazz.
Maybe.
Did you even say that anymore? I sound like my mother.
Yeah, no, it's interesting what you're saying about the statistics thing though. I went on a course a while back and that was one of the things they really stress there is like use statistics and numbers because it does just add weight to your argument. And the other thing I remember they were saying is reference like a respected person, a famous person.
Quote a
or
reliable
something like
source.
that.
It's up there somewhere, I think. Quote a reliable source.
I definitely remember writing it down.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if you do, and the thing is, in the exam, if you can't remember a reliable source, I say to my students, you know, make it up. Just make it up.
Yeah.
It can be, you know, just, I don't know, Ruby Borderlands scientist, you know, to the moon. I don't know, I'm making it up now. But you know, make it believable for what you're actually writing here. Absolutely, statistics. It's interesting though, statistics can be manipulated, and that's the other thing. Obviously, if we teach you how to analyse persuasive devices, we teach you how to use them and manipulate them. We're kind of teaching you how to become wordsmiths and spin doctors, future spin doctors of the world. But yeah, it's all good stuff.
Cool. Right, we've got, we think we might have decoded your question.
Yes.
Always Atik. And actually this is another question that quite a few people have asked on our YouTube community before. Basically just how to get those top grades, those 7s, 8s and 9s in GCSE English Language.
In English Language. Right, okay, I think the key thing with English language, those top bands, it's always perceptive, insightful, understanding, perceptive, insightful, okay? And I think with both papers at AQA, they're mama chuffer papers, aren't they? They're asking very different things of you. So I think, you know, paper 1 is the fiction. I think it sometimes throws, especially if it's a really dodgy extract, can throw you. So I think the key thing is, I mean, this is really simple advice, but you just got to really know what each question is asking for you. Don't fall into the traps of answering the question in an incorrect way. Don't analyse where you're not supposed to analyse. Do make sure that also as well, what's your timings? I mean, you're not given loads, so it's an hour and 45 minutes, something like that. Really, really quick, those papers, and yet they're asking an awful lot of you. And actually, I think last year, a lot of my students came a cropper actually on the writing side, because I think sometimes the reading, you concentrate too much on, and you forget that actually the second half of that paper is worth a lot of marks all by itself. And a lot of them became a bit, as I said, became a bit of a cropper. So I think sometimes come up with a strategy yourself, in the sense of, you know, making sure with the writing you give it the time that your teacher has taught you to do, and they make sure that you come up with something. With the writing, it's got to be imaginative, it's got to be exciting, it's got to have ambitious vocabulary, you've got to understand that, as I'm talking about, the audience, the purpose and the form that you've been asked to write in, especially for the paper 2. But also I think some students find the structure question quite tricky. So I think, you know, when you're analysing structure, don't forget that it can be anything in the sense of, if you actually look at how it opens, how middle, end, but also don't forget your sentence structure. I think students sometimes forget sentence structure. So use of listing, asyndetic, syndetic listing, ones without and ones with and how that is effective, but also short sentences can really, really help. A nice short statement. Don't forget, if you've got one in that extract, then you make sure you do unpack it and things like that. So I think certainly with those, and it's AQA basically say it's not the quantity you write either; it's the quality. So
that's something that came up on Tuesday night with Ms. Rogerson as well. Is make sure that you're getting like really good value out of what you're writing, rather than just
you
waffling.
Literally on the questions you're supposed to analyse. And I say to my unpack everything you can see in that quotation. Don't expect the quotation to do the work for you. You've got to go back to that quotation and you've got to work it. I say to my year 7s, you've got to hug that quotation and squeeze out those connotations. Yes, they do look at me like as though I'm mad, but it works. So I think you just make sure that definitely those higher mark questions you've got, you know, in the comparison, you've got balance between the comparison. Also as well, I think for those longer mark questions, you've got to remember to plan. A lot of students panic. You've got to remember to plan. Even if it's really brief in that comparison question in paper 2, just make sure you've got, okay, what you're going to write on this side, bullet point, what you're going to write on this side, bullet point. Also strategies for how you highlight as well. Sometimes it's quite a good idea to have different colours for different things. So one colour for language, one colour for linguistic imagery, so if there's a simile or a metaphor or personification or anything like that, different colours, maybe structural can be a different colour, so that when you're going back to those extracts you can flick your eyes over and you know exactly what you're looking for, and it's so much faster. I really think those exams are tricky because of the timings, yeah.
Yeah, I know one thing you mentioned back at the weekend was highlight the important parts of the question to help you make sure you're actually answering the question that's on the paper. Because there's nothing more heartbreaking than writing this amazing essay or analysis that's actually not going to get you that many marks.
And I think that does happen, especially in that danger zone question which has gone out of my head, where the one you don't unpack. See, it's the inference question, I think, on paper 1. And if you analyse, you don't get any marks for it. None, nada. So I think making sure you definitely know what you have to do for each question, whether you make a little tick sheet. So question 1, do this, question 2, do this, question 3, do this, whatever. Or a little success criteria that that you sort of balance, technical terms, quotation, etc, etc. You just got to make sure you cover all those things. They're asking you to do an awful lot, and I think timing is very much a lot of the issue some of the time, and especially those extracts, especially if they do throw you. Try not to let them throw you, and obviously the key thing to do there is to practice. Even if there aren't that many, well, there are a few more than when we first started teaching the spec, but there's not loads of past papers out there, and your teachers might squirrel them away and want to use them in class. But there's no harm in going out there and getting a newspaper article, printing it off and just saying, okay, what can I see? With non-fiction, remember it's PALS as well, so purpose, audience, structure and language covers imagery and all that jazz. So basically just practice your annotations and then think, okay, if this was a question 2 or this or whatever, how would I answer? What kind of question could they ask?
Yeah, maybe if you want some more practice, ask your teacher if they've got any recommendations of extra text you could analyse, because I'm sure most would be happy to help.
Oh yeah.
I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No, always. And I mean, obviously revision sessions and things, students come along and that's kind of what we do. We literally just go through the paper and making sure that the skills are there. But I certainly know, I think the structure question is always the danger zone, and the inference question, because I think teachers, we teach you so much to analyse, and suddenly we're telling you not to analyse, and I think it's a sneaky thing really, that question, and then also especially the writing side is worth quite a lot, so that's why we've kind of been focusing on that as well, because I think they the who, what, when, where, why, they're looking for audience, purpose, form, they're looking for ambitious vocabulary, all of those things, and actually that can really bring your marks up. So if the reading goes a little bit peaked on, you've got this side of the paper to really bring up your mark as well.
Cool. Okay. Well, I think we're going to have another little look at that trailer we showed you earlier. If you weren't watching, you're in for a treat. And then after that, Miss Chris will be doing some more exercises with you. Yeah. So let's look at that trailer just now.
Okay.
That 6 marker on solids, liquids and gases? Yes, please. Thank you for that.
I remember coming home, it was the first exam, the biology paper. I was scrolling through YouTube and I saw the MSE GCSE reaction team, the reaction to that paper.
We were given questions about a fania. It's a little parasite, a little bit.
I think it was one of the English papers, and I watched them. I totally could relate to them.
Today we had our last ever exam, physics paper 2. AQA.
Watching the exam videos this year were really helpful because I've just recently chosen my options.
I was struggling on literally every single question. I was like, I'll miss it and come back to it, but even when I came back to it, didn't make any sense.
I found MSE about 6 months ago when I was doing my year 10 mocks, and I've continued to watch them because they're just so useful and relatable.
I wish I'd discovered it earlier really, because all the videos are so helpful.
For once, I actually understood everything.
No! So I got that question wrong.
I'm really happy that I was part of the reaction team, because if you look in the comments of videos, it's so nice to see that the reaction videos have helped people through exam season.
Our last exam was history. I think it was the best one for all of us, to be honest.
I was really nervous at first, but I genuinely felt so a part of something.
I slightly went off on a tangent on the imaginative writing and wrote about they were lost on Mount Everest. So
that is such a good idea what MSE are doing.
Thank you for MSE for letting me be a part of the channel.
And we're back. Hello. I hope you all enjoyed that. I know a lot of our audience were really big fans of our GCSE reaction videos back in May and June. So head over to our YouTube channel and have a look at some of those. And in very exciting news, we have actually just launched a new Instagram account, two new Instagram accounts, at GCSE Reactions and at A-Level Reactions, where we're just going to be giving you what you want, just non-stop GCSE reaction videos. So head over there and give us a follow. We would very much appreciate it. So what are we doing next, Miss Chris?
Right, now we've looked at 2 speeches, I think it's probably time we look at the question and have a go at kind of how we tackle it and how we maybe write a speech.
Right, so this is to help you out with English Language Paper 2, so persuasive writing.
Okay.
Right, I'll let you get on with it.
Right then, so I've got a question here. Which kind of links, I think, to the 2 speeches that we looked at, because obviously the question will always be linked to it in some way, and of course you are able to use the sources that you have been given. So in the paper, you know, the 2 non-fiction pieces, you can go to them for important here to have ambition and follow your dreams. So this is about ambition and dreams. Right, oh hang on. So that's the vision. We'll go for green for vision. Then if we think, so this is the form, right, a speech. Okay, so that is your form. I don't know if you can read that. Okay, for school assembly, right, for school assembly. That, my friends, is your audience. So already, what's really lovely about this question is you know that you're going to have to write a speech for your age group or younger. So the language, obviously, can be adapted accordingly. Because a speech is normally a formal thing, but you've got to think about your audience, okay? We should explain why ambitions and dreams are important. Right, so why ambition and dreams are important. So your speech may include and address your listeners and why you've chosen to speak to them. So your views on the importance of ambition and any other points that you wish to make. Right, so let's have a think about this question. Because actually, you've got to think about, I always advise to use kind of 5 persuasive devices. You've got 5 persuasive devices tucked under your belt. Of course, you can go beyond that. Right, so ambition and dreams. Right, so why is it important to follow your ambitions and dreams? What do we reckon? Oh, well, I don't know, what am I going to go for? Well, actually, let's face it, without ambition, we wouldn't have some of the greatest discoveries of all time. So if we think about this, I don't know, let's go for penicillin. I hope I can spell it. I'll just put pen down there. It's been a long day. All right, so penicillin. That was found by accident, but he still had ambition to find it. Also, I suppose, let's think about something another thing you can use, obviously, is colloquial references or references in the media. Let's go for Greta Thunberg, because actually, without her and her ambition, but also her dreams, in the sense of the fact that, so this is if we're thinking about sort of examples from media or around you. So these people, if they hadn't had ambition and dreams, okay, if they hadn't, okay, so initial ideas, you can annotate your paper all around it. So let's go for another one. So let's think about sort of us and school children dreams. Without ambition and dreams, well, let's face it, you're in school, you're doing exams, so exams can be rubbish, okay, but they will get you where you need to go. Okay? Get to where go. I can't write. Where go. They are your gateway. That's what I say all the time. They're a means to an end to achieve your dreams. So you've got to have them. Whether that be to be an astronaut, whether it be the person to discover the cure for cancer, or whether it be to become the first female president of the United States of America. You never know. Okay, hopefully. So gateway. Also why, so this idea of why they're important. So you've got to have them because you've got to have, should we go, let's this idea of maybe drive. Without drive, you kind of be lost. So we've got some 4 arguments. Now we've got to think about maybe our counter arguments. Now this process should actually maybe take you sort of 5 minutes, 10 minutes max when you're planning. And I think it's really important actually if you do spend that quality time thinking and planning, because then the writing should come. So let's think about what if you weren't ambitious? What if you didn't have dreams? Well, what would you end up doing? Well, if people, dreams, actually I won't use the blue, let's go for the green. If you didn't have, so this is sort of your counter argument. Well, you might just be bored. You wouldn't do anything. We could go back to some of our examples. So, you know, there wouldn't be electricity. There wouldn't be sort of people discovering, can't write, new things. So not just medicine, because so anything scientific is always good to quote as well. But you know, new things. So if you think about actually, what about Malala? Let's shove her in there as well. She's always good. This idea of having dreams and ambition. Actually, you could turn that on its head because she was fighting for equality. But if she hadn't had that dream and that drive, then actually, you know, education in Pakistan would be in a worse state. But yeah, bored, wouldn't do anything. We wouldn't have anything. We wouldn't have electricity. We wouldn't have sort of knowledge of the seabed. I don't know. You know, I'm kind of coming up with ideas. So really, so 5 persuasive devices. This one, if you're thinking about it, if you want to use your personal experience, let's go for, I might go for this, maybe an anecdote. An anecdote is a little story. You might want to start with maybe your dreams. I then might go for, I think if we're talking about people who are visionaries, a bit of hyperbole will always be good because that will really big them up and make them sound awesome. Also, I think with this one, quoting a reliable source will also be helpful. Okay, 4th, cluster of 3, I think would work here. And then a rhetorical question is one of my personal favourites. What would you do? Are you just going to sit on the couch and ignore the world around you? You know, I think it's important. So basically, you probably need, you know, at least sort of 4 fours against each if you can. All right, now you might not have the time to do that, and as I was saying earlier, it's quality, not quantity. So even if you had 3 and 3 or 2 and 2 and then padded it out, but remember this side of the paper is worth quite a lot. So when you're kind of brainstorming or spider diagramming here, I think it's important to kind of think, okay, what are my fours going to be? What am I against going to be? And actually, you've got several parts of the question here. So have we covered everything? Have we covered ambition? Well, yes, I think we have, because what this idea, we've got penicillin here. We've got, if they hadn't gotten to penicillin, well, actually, we'd all be dying. You know, there'd still be a high child death rate. So something got very serious, isn't it? Sorry, guys. And then over here, though, dreams. This idea of being a visionary. If you don't have a vision, life can be pretty stressful. So this idea of having a dream and a vision, you know, and you can breathe. I mean, you know, there's things you can hear. This idea of going to the moon, going into space. But also simply, I don't know somebody who invented the Post-it. I mean, I think that was another one that was by accident. But you know, the fact that they had that dream. Okay, so once you've got your ideas, the next thing to do is to number them, and you don't have to necessarily follow it, but it's to give yourself a bit of control over your answer. So let's go for this idea of ambition. To follow your dreams, perhaps. Let's go for this idea. Let's go for Greta first because she's really topical at the moment. Nice colloquial, was called a colloquial reference. I'll write that down for you. Okay, a colloquial reference. Colloquial, can't spell. Reference. So colloquial reference is sometimes like a little phrase as well. So something like, I don't know, don't count your chickens till they're hatched is a colloquial term, colloquial phrase, but also colloquial reference. Greta, you know, she's Time Magazine. Was it Time Magazine? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Time Magazine. So she's really in the know. So once you've got your ideas, you then need to think about sort of what you should include. So your key argument. So we've got ambition. We've got Greta. So Greta. We've then got, we might then want to go further our point. So we might then go for why dream. So maybe another example of somebody awesome. So let's go for penicillin. You could go for the telephone, you could go for some other invention. You could go for maybe if someone didn't have a sort of ambition to get wherever they wanted to go. So I don't know, you could go for someone like Elon Musk, although he's a little bit dicey at the moment. But it's penicillin probably, that was, he wanted to help people. Or the guy who invented inhalers, the asthma, he had asthma himself. So once again, this ambition to kind of help serve people. But, if in doubt, if you can't think of anything like that in the exam, use the sources that they've given you and just try and think outside the box as much as you can in the time and under pressure. So I'll go for those two. So you might want to make your first 2 points of like the 4, okay? But then you probably want to go for the counteract. So if you're not non-ambitious, so you might then, so point 3 might be one of these. Okay, so a counter argument. Well, if you're not ambitious, this is how we'll end up. So far though, we haven't come to dreams. Okay, so I think once you've maybe done 1 or 2 on, in this case, one part of your question, link to a counter argument, and then come back to maybe the second part of your question. Okay, so this would probably be 4. So, and make it real to them. So then something actually, without our dreams, having to suffer through school would be pretty rubbish. Yeah, or dreams, I want to travel the world. I want to write a novel. I still want to write a novel. I haven't got there yet. But little things like that you could drop in. Okay, so once you've got your initial plan, obviously that's kind of now when you're ready to start writing. So just to sum up really, highlight keywords in the question, and they'll always be asking you several things. If we think about it, we've got audience, form and purpose. So the audience, people like you, basically, but also people in the school assembly, might be teachers as well. All right, it's a speech, so you've got to show them you understand the speech form. Okay, and obviously with that, it's kind of how you write it, it's how you use your tone. You could say, good morning, everybody. Don't write something like, welcome to my speech. Try and open it in a grabbing way. I'll come to that in a minute. Okay, so then we've highlight keywords in question, know your audience, purpose and form. Next thing is obviously you've got to come up with some ideas of how to answer it. So things for, things against, okay, and then structurally, in some ways it's kind of what you've got to establish why you believe what you believe and why the other viewpoint is wrong. So you've got to make sure you have those counter arguments in there. Okay. So in other words, basically I think this idea of grabbing introduction, first paragraph, first idea, second paragraph, can expand on the first one, can bring a new one, could be a counter argument if you're strapped for time. Then bring it back to a third paragraph where you're giving maybe a counter argument or acknowledgement of another opinion. Try and repeat that maybe twice if you've got the time. And then obviously add your conclusion. Now if you think about, just try and channel Mark Antony in your conclusion. So this idea of summarising your ideas, but make your ending strong. So don't forget, if you're aiming at your peers, you can make a joke. You could talk about not being a snowflake or whatever, that kind of thing. You put some puns in there, put some, lyrics from a song that'll make people laugh. Or you could end on an anecdote, something memorable that people will either chuckle about later or discuss later is a really good way to end. Okay, so I don't know, should we ever go at writing an opening? Do you want to go?
Oh goodness, I don't know about that.
Yeah?
I was picking up on you writing novels there.
Oh, I'd love to write one. It's just having the time.
What would you write about?
Well, I suppose they say you've got to write about yourself. So I don't know really. I've got a few ideas. Before I moved to Guernsey, I lived in Rome for 4 years. Taught international school out there, and and I lived in this really quite nice apartment building right by the Vatican. It sounds bizarre now. It sounds like a life of a different person. But I used to kind of come out and the Vatican Wall was there, and there was a palazzo next door that I never saw anybody. I literally never saw anybody coming in or out. And there was a dog. There was a Dalmatian dog that used to potter around and stuff. And there was the cancello, the gate. But it was never open. I never saw anyone. But it was a beautiful Art Deco, like palazzo villa, and I remember starting. I had a friend's dog stay with me. Had dog sitting. I was dog sitting. I took her out for a constitution. I was standing opposite the road, right by the Vatican Wall, looking at this palazzo, thinking that'd be a really good setting for like a disappearance, or I bet there's a body in the cellar, because I do love a bit of Agatha Christie. So I think maybe a mystery set in Rome, in kind of, I could maybe base the character in the palazzo that I used to live in, but with this palazzo next door or something. I don't know. Maybe.
Would you like write under your own name or a pen name?
I don't know. It depends if it's good or not.
Hedge your bets.
I won't say what my nom de plume would be either, because just in case it all went completely wrong. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. So if we think about, should we ever get writing? I don't know.
Back on topic.
Back on topic.
Yeah.
We can. Right, so I suppose, how could we answer it? We could talk about Greta Thunberg, we could start with an anecdote. What should we go for?
I do quite like an anecdote start. So I think the last thing like this that I probably, not the last thing that I ever wrote like this, but this reminds me of writing my personal statement for my UCAS application.
Yes. Also good use of persuasive devices.
Yeah, and I know I started mine with a little anecdote because I was applying to study natural sciences, and I had a little anecdote about the first time I ever went to the Natural History Museum.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
So that was cute.
Yeah, make it. Yeah, actually, while we're here, personal statements. Make them they are personal statements for a reason, and I think with so many people applying, they are literally looking at the person. I know that it's written on the tin, the clue is there. But I think anything that you can bring that's a little bit different, a little bit quirky. So I had a student and she used to like writing, and also she used to be on hospital radio here.
Oh, wow.
So basically she started her personal statement as she would start her kind of radio show, and that was really quite quirky. So yeah, anything like that is really quite grabbing. So I suppose if we were going to get Greta, what were you saying about Greta Thunberg's tweet? It was the tweet.
So Donald Trump tweeted today, basically saying that Greta Thunberg needed to get help with her anger management issues, and she'd actually just go and chill out and watch a movie with her friend. And so she's just changed her Twitter bio to teenager trying to deal with her anger management issues.
Okay, so could we perhaps get that, or take that out, could we get that into our opening somehow? What could we put? So hang on, we could write. Actually, I'll write it on paper, and what I'll do is I'll put it over the top of this. I'll put that back.
Do you want some clean paper?
That's okay. I'll write about the back of this.
Okay,
yeah.
cool.
So waste not, want not. So if we think about it, right, let's go. So those eagle-eyed. Can't write. Tweeters amongst you. No doubt spotted, my handwriting's gone to pot, the tweet from a certain US president, people will chuckle at that, advising Greta Thunberg to
work on her anger management problem, then go to a good old-fashioned movie with a friend.
So work on her anger... Great advice. Management problem, and go and see a movie with a friend. Go and see a movie with a friend. Right, so what we've got here, if I put this under here, what we've got here is just what we literally threw together, so please excuse the handwriting. But we've got tweeters, colloquial reference, we've got direct address, we've also got already the feeling of form, because it's relatively formal, but you can hear it's probably spoken rather than written. And actually, this is really now, so get reading the newspaper, or get reading. You don't have to get an old-fashioned broadsheet. I can't read them anyway because they're far too big for me. But read online, get onto Twitter, get out there in the news, BBC app, whatever. Get those ideas coming between now and your GCSEs, because actually the more you kind of know about the world around you, the more you'll be able to write about it. So, we're working about anger management problem and engagement with a friend. Right, so where are we going to take this? So we got an anecdote as well. That's probably an anecdote as well as a colloquial reference. But now we need to bring it to our title, so ambitions and dreams. How are we going to rephrase that?
So picking up on what you said just there about kind of knowing what's going on in the world and stuff, if you look at some of Greta's herself, she does some amazing speeches.
Oh, she does,
and there's that kind of... she
gets proper angry as well.
Yeah, that kind of theme going through about like our house is on fire.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could make reference to that, like the cinema's on fire.
Cinema's on fire. Oh, yes, okay, so I'm going to put house on fire up here to remind me. Okay, so we need to get in ambition and dreams. So if I can add my problem, go and see a movie with a friend. Oh, what about we say he's a liar with his pants on fire?
I like it.
So in answer to him, I would say he's a liar with his pants on fire.
So say, if anyone in the comment is having a go writing along, we'd love to hear what you have to say.
Absolutely, definitely, it'd be great. Because without her dream, drive, or ambition.
Nice little rule of 3 there.
Right, all well spotted. Yes. Little rule of 3, 1, 2, 3. Also, nice little bit of alliteration. Okay, nice little bit of alliteration. I'll put that under there so you can see it. Okay, so dream, drive, or ambition. What, we wouldn't have climate change. Capital, well, let's give them capitals. Would still be at the bottom of every politician's agenda. Okay, so here we have, absolutely, got reference to the house on fire, we've got reference then, and this is another technique while we're here. It's a slight pun, which is a play on words, but also, if you want to be really swanky, it's an allusion with an A. So allusion is where you allude to something that someone else has done. It could be from literature, it can be from kind of the world around you. The easiest way I remember allusion is actually Bridget Jones. So in Bridget Jones, there's Mark Darcy. Now Mark Darcy is an allusion to Mr. Darcy in Pride and Prejudice, of course. So those of us in literary circles are like, ha ha ha, that's really funny, especially as, of course, it is Colin Firth who played Mr. Darcy, Fitzwilliam Darcy, and then obviously then played Mark Darcy. I'm getting my words like that. So it was a very funny use of allusion out there. So we've got allusion as well. Makes people really think. And those of you doing the IGCSE, if you know the extracts about boys messing about, there's the allusion to endeavour. And sort of, endeavour, endurance, HMS Endurance and Endurance, a Shackleton ship where he got all his men back and nobody died, and those two dudes in that article basically crashed their little helicopter and were totally rubbish. So it's kind of being used to illustrate how rubbish they were. Okay, so ambition over climate change would still be at the bottom of every politician's agenda. So bottom is like, colloquial again, but also as well, climate change is really, it's so now, as they would say, it's so now. So now you've got a really lovely opening. So from that, of course, you would need to then develop your point to include perhaps some other examples. You could maybe say about how, she was photographed sitting outside the Swedish Parliament just on her own with a little whiteboard, but yet now it basically inspired the whole world to go on marches. We had one here, our whole school walked into town one lunchtime and talked to our version of our president. We don't really have a president, but he's what's he called? Senior.
It's not even called Chief Minister
He's
anymore.
not, no, he isn't. The top dude, anyway.
Yeah,
top politician. And so much so he then came back to school to answer some of the students' questions. So it is working.
Yeah.
Greta, it's working. Anyway, so you can expand on that. Of course, if you expand on Greta, But then what you might like then is to go to, okay, if Greta, you could extend that idea, so it could be an extended metaphor. Extended metaphor runs throughout your writing, but obviously with Greta you could say, well actually, if you could almost add in a kind of little made up anecdote of like, if Greta hadn't bothered, if she hadn't bothered, where would we be? And of course with climate change, we'd be kind of, as I said once again, bottom of the agenda. So you could maybe give that as a counter argument. Okay.
That was fun.
Yeah.
Well, if you have been writing along, we'd love to see what you have to say. We've just been looking at writing an opening to a speech, looking at how we can get some of those persuasive devices in there, making sure we're knowing our audience and getting all these techniques in there. So I think that's is that it for the plan stuff? So we've got a few more questions in the comments here. Kayana Geshier says that they are doing edXL, but every time they're given an extract, they never know what English features to analyse. Can we give them some help?
Right, okay. So presumably, I suppose it's kind of just knowing what to look for. So I think this goes back to my previous comment, because it can be very overwhelming to kind of have something. But I think if I just grab maybe one of my speeches here, and if I think, if you look at it, I don't know, I'll look at the end here. So I don't know, we shall never surrender, even if I do not believe the island is part of our work. So subjugated and starving. Now for me, straight away, subjugated and starving sound quite interesting. You know, you can hear the sound, you can hear the sibilance. Also, subjugated is a really interesting verb because it means obviously being under the power of somebody else, kind of almost being slaves. So I think what you've got to think about is really interesting and exciting adjectives. Verbs, so actually describing word, verbs are you doing words, so you look for those, and then also as well their effect. So if it's a fiction piece, you can look for mood and atmosphere there. So adjectives, verbs, also adverbs. Adverbs obviously describe the verb. They can really help with that description. So those three things, look for those. And then of course your second string to your bow is figurative language. That's your similes, your metaphors, your personification. So when you first see that extract, take a deep breath and just literally highlight any of those that you can see. But your next step, of course, is thinking about the effect. So you've got to think, so for example, if you were to have the sort of simile, I don't know, really easy one, as cold as ice, for example. You know, okay, it's cold as ice is a simile, but it's effective because actually it's insinuating that person is really unfeeling, they're unfriendly, they're unkind. So see if you can come up with maybe at least two ideas to write next to it. So language choice first. It's your bread and butter of sort of analysis. Then your figurative language. Your final thing, of course, you need to remember is your structure. And for that as well, look at sentence length, because sometimes writers use listing quite a lot, and listing can make everything feel quite exuberant and abundant. So for example, if it's describing a very a busy city scene, they might use loads of listing, I don't know, or like Christmas, so you might have, you know, like yellow parcels, red parcels, green parcels, a tangerine in the toe, you know, so you have that kind of listing which adds to that abundance. So word choice, techniques, any structural sentence lengths and how they've been adapted, and as I said before, get a feel for it. Get a feel. What is the mood? What is the atmosphere? What's the setting? It really does depend what extract you're talking about. Because if it's fiction, obviously you need to be looking also for the generic conventions. So that is characterisation and setting and things like that. But initially, just go for those word choices and the figurative language and think about the effect there, and that should help you, hopefully.
Cool, I hope that was helpful. Now, Jivanandam Pothiraj, I'm very sorry for pronouncing your name wrong, is asking if we know the questions asked about Romeo and Juliet in the edXL paper.
I don't know the questions that were asked. But I think the thing with Romeo and Juliet, there's only a certain amount of things they can ask you. Okay, so if you think about it, it's going to be either thematic, so love and hate, family, relationships, the feud, maybe. All right, so revise your themes, because they might ask you a thematic one. If they ask you a thematic one, of course, you've then got to think about parts of the play that kind of come under love and hate. So this idea of hate, well, the prologue gives you the hate and it gives you the love. Always talk about the prologue. if you have the opportunity to. Then obviously pick various other parts of the play that would kind of link to that theme. But also as well, they could ask you about character. And I think when they ask you about character, you've got to talk about how that character is at the beginning of the play, and obviously how they develop. And of course, most of them die, so you've got to include, you kind of got to include that. So I think, they're really the only two things they can ask you. You've got to remember it's a tragedy. So fate is really important.
Not a love story.
It's not.
Speaking
Miss
about
Rogerson's
the
very
weekend.
adamant about that. No, it's definitely, and actually, fate. The tragic heroes, they've got to fall. So Romeo and Juliet have to die at the end because that's what the genre demands, that's what kind of tragedy demands. But the thing is, their fatal flaw is actually their love for each other, but also an even bigger fatal flaw is the conflict, the outside conflict that they are surrounded by, which is the feud. So make sure that you do kind of reference that. But the prologue is really handy because you're basically told they're star-crossed lovers. You're basically told that they die, they take their life. That it basically tells that two households both alike in dignity and fair Verona where we lay our scene. So you know that conflict is there from ancient grudge to new mutiny. So get to grips with that prologue, I think, and then just make sure that you know your characters really well. Romeo, bit of an idiot, but bless him. So he's there being all he's also his fickleness, but then it's destiny. That lovely sonnet when they meet, very clever. Shakespeare's very clever, and the fact that obviously they both die, and that kind of twist of fate for the pathos. That means super sadness, by the way. At the end of the play, he just dies, and then she's awake. So character, and just really you kind of need to revise Romeo and Juliet. They're two pretty important characters, and then just make sure you also the minor characters. Mercutio is quite important. If you get a Mercutio question, you kind of have to include the Queen Mab speech. Not my favourite. Mr. Rogerson loves the Queen Mab speech, but you kind of, if you get Mercutio, you can't ignore it. Obviously, if you get a minor character, something like the nurse, don't forget she ultimately lets Juliet down. So there's not theme and character, and make sure you get your ideas from the prologue really.
If you still would like to know more about Romeo and Juliet, Ms. Rogerson, who will be back on Sunday evening, is a very, very big fan, is she not?
She's a very big fan. She loves Shakespeare. She'll tell you she went to Shakespeare summer school last year. So she loves him. She loves the Bard. Yeah, for sure. The thing is, like Romeo and Juliet, I've lost count how many times I've taught it.
Yeah.
It's kind of.
I did Romeo and Juliet for my GCSE coursework.
I did really do it when I was in school in year 9. I think I did it in year 9 with Mr. Suter.
I remember writing about light and dark for my coursework.
Oh yes, the light and dark imagery.
Yeah. So
she's the east and Juliet is the sun or something.
Something like
that.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
That might be quite a fun question to end on. We had a question from our YouTube community maybe 10 days ago now saying, is Romeo and Juliet the greatest love story ever?
Yes. Well, to quote Miss Rogerson, it's not a love story, it's a tragedy. I think Italians love it, Italians love Romeo and Juliet. They love the fact that they love the fact it's set there. And if you go to Verona, that's Juliet's house. You can visit her house. It's not really her house. It's got a little balcony, which is not really her balcony. And there is the statue. Right at the end of the play, it's Capulet. No, it's Montague who says, "I'm going to erect this statue of Juliet out of gold," and they've got it. It's not out of gold. It's bronze. But there she is, and you can visit. But I think they love it because it's love at first sight. They're so young. They're both teenagers. Juliet's only 13, 14. They're so young, and that is lovely exuberance. I think Italians love that. But ultimately it is a tragedy. You can't ignore the fact that a lot of people die at the end of the play, and they have to die for that kind of wiping the slate clean, or as the Greeks used to call it, catharsis. But no, I think. Love story, the greatest love story I've ever told, definitely not Romeo and Juliet. I'll probably go with I probably will go with it again. And I was teaching chapter 5 of The Great Gatsby today, and every single time I teach that, I'm like, oh, Gatsby is so adorable. This once again though, it's doomed. I mean, a lot of love stories seem to be doomed, but because nobody's quite right. But I think that Gatsby, he plans and he plots and he creates this persona to achieve the American dream, to enter that elite American society, which ultimately, of course, he can't do and will never be able to do, because but it's really his love for Daisy kind of symbolises that. And in chapter 5, it's the first time that they've seen each other for sort of like 5 years, and I just love it. I just love the imagery and the pathetic fallacy, and the, you know, and the Gatsby just is, he's like a little boy, and Nick tells him off, and then Rachel tells him off. So yes, definitely. And of course, once again, Gatsby dies. Spoiler alert. But yeah, but that's, you know, it's tragic because he's let down. He's let down by society. He's let down by, and actually it's probably because he's an archetype from America. Anyway, I'm getting very technical, but I think Great Gatsby for sure.
There we go. I think we might have to ask Miss Rogerson the same question on Sunday and see.
She
what
hates the Great
says.
Gatsby, so it won't be that.
Keep the debate going.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I think that's about all from us.
No, it's fine.
Keep the questions coming in for our next live streams. So we'll be back on Sunday with Miss Rogerson looking at some poetry. I know a couple of people in the comments were asking about poetry earlier, and also on Tuesday as well. So get the notification button hit for Sunday evening, and we'll see you then. Thank you very much for watching.